Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Very excited to be talking to you about the hot topic of hybrid working, which I'm sure as you're all aware, this is why you're joining, has been brought very much into focus now that people are beginning to return to offices in some capacity, having been working remotely in various situations over the last 18 months. So just talk you through a bit of the agenda for today. Be a quick introduction from me, and then we will dive straight into a bit about hybrid working, some of the elements we see around fatigue, the lovely back-to-back meetings that we all experience, and then some technical challenges around hybrid working and the importance of technology in underpinning a successful hybrid working culture. And then at the end, there'll be time dedicated for some question and answers. By way of introductions, my name's Tom Scott. I'm a senior product manager here at Modality. I look after all our video interop services, and I'm joined today by Sean Murphy, who's a technical product owner and managing consultant, and Michael De Dominic, who is a managing consultant in our adoption and change management team. So hopefully we've got a lot of bases covered to talk to you about all facets of hybrid working and some of the challenges and key themes that we see throughout all of our discussions we have with customers and our experience. So a quick intro to Modality Systems. We are the world's largest dedicated Microsoft Teams practice. We've been a Teams partner ever since we were started in 2007, and our heritage is very much in the Microsoft Unified Communication space, right from the old OCS days through Lync, Skype for Business iterations, Teams, and now M365. So we have a lot of we deal with a lot of challenges around hybrid working. It underpins our culture here at Modality, and it is very much front of all of the conversations that we're having with customers around how we enable it, how we deliver and support technology around it, and also what it means and what there will never be a right answer for it, but trying to find what the right fit is and the right balance for people now as we look to go back to work into workplaces, and whatever that looks like in the future, that's where we spend our day. So this is very much front and center of what we do, and look forward to talking to you about this today. Just by way of housekeeping, please feel free that if you have any questions at any point, please enter them into the Teams chat for the live event, and we will get to those at the end. We'll also address the questions that people have been kind enough to send us ahead of time. We'll address those in the Q&A at the end. And just finally, following this session, there'll be the recording sent round to everybody, and we will also send a copy of the slides and materials from today's session round as well. So that's it from me. Without further ado, I will hand over now to Michael De Dominic, who's going to talk us through some of the meanings of hybrid working, particularly in the changing role of the office. So Michael, I will go on mute and hand over to you.
Hey, Tom, thanks so much. And go ahead and kick over to the next one. Much appreciated. Yeah, so as Tom said, adoption and change management is my key focus at Modality, and thankful to be in that role. It's been very important with all this global pandemic stuff. A lot of organizations had begun to tool up and equip their users for more of a hybrid or remote working scenario prior to all this crazy COVID stuff. But especially with that as a catalyst that absolutely made flexible working a huge necessity to get the important work done that organizations are accomplishing, this became key. I know at Modality, we've had a mix of folks working in a hybrid scenario as well as purely remote. And so that's one of the things we like to toss out there, like, where are folks at right now? Are you at the office? Are you at home? There's just so many organizations. My neighbor across the street went from full-on remote working because of COVID. Now they're full-on back in the office. So we know that that can vary pretty significantly, but everyone seems to agree, except my neighbor's company apparently, that that traditional approach to that office environment will really never be the same again. So this reality, this truth that we're carrying forward, there really is a term that's been coined by these analysts, et cetera, called that hybrid working scenario. That's our option 3 there. And it's centered around a flexible working model that allows people to have space in the office and to be equipped to do everything that they need to do from a remote location. In most cases, it's a home or space in their home that we've all kind of had to try and carve out at this point. So definitely some unique challenges there from a software perspective, from a hardware perspective, and there's kind of some interesting statistics that are bubbling up from this. And of course, establishing a successful practice can be challenging. You can't just go and flip on Teams for everyone and expect that that is going to work as it should. So Tom, go ahead and pop over to the next one. Much appreciated. Just some basic stats here. The consensus is that, hey, we need to change our physical space. Employees need and want that flexibility, especially now that so many of them have had a taste for it. And of course, they feel a little lonely because, gosh, so many of us have been working in our spaces alone and interacting with real humans just over our webcams for so long now. We're ready for some interaction with real people, but we like the flexibility, and that means we're going to have to change some of the ways we work. So Tom, go ahead and hop over to the next one. Some of those changes involve some technical enablement, and a lot of organizations have already begun to make these considerations. They're setting up things like multi-factor authentication. We saw a ton more enablements for MFA with all this COVID remote working stuff. We saw a lot of people start to install authenticator applications on mobile devices, and ideally, hopefully, getting just core hardware out to end users. This can really be something as simple as we were working with one organization that they were still working from desktops because it was easier to manage on a wired network in a building, and they had some pretty secure and important things. It was the financial, sector, and transitioning to working from home meant, oh my gosh, we need to figure out a way to get people literally like laptops deployed, core things like a headset even, or for so many folks, something as simple as having dual monitors available is such a core part to what we do now, because one screen we're sharing content while the other screen we're looking at our notes and looking at and responding to messages in a session like we are in right now. So having that dual screen really is a huge part. So little things like that start to trickle through, as well as how can we securely enable folks to potentially use their own devices, primarily their mobile. So all of these things that used to kind of be like fringe nice to have, or maybe we'll get there eventually, all of a sudden became extremely important. And by the way, a lot of us are really good at let's check the boxes and manage the projects from a technical perspective, but man, is it ever important to provide training and comms? And that's my space, that's my bubble, that's my area, is successfully managing that change. So we're going to talk a little bit about that more as well. As we're talking about things that should be really important for those managers, the people dealing with people, there's a huge increase in asynchronous work. We need to, in some ways, encourage the healthy side of that and discourage the unhealthy side of that. We don't want to be building practices and cultures where folks are responding to messages at 9 p.m. and then they're also jumping on at 6 a.m. I know that we work in an international organization at Modality, and so we flex as best we can and have some understanding there, but that is a huge piece of what's going on. Our physical office spaces, now they need space where maybe before there was a conference room that people could kind of come in and out of, and people from out of town might kind of claim that as their office. Guess what? That's going to be a whole lot more people now, and creating that space is important. The other thing that we've seen as a major trend for managing the people side of this is, as you saw from those statistics, people want to interact with people, and they don't necessarily need or want it to be exactly about the project, about the work all the time. So being extra intentional about scheduling that time for visiting and connecting is huge. as you might expect, Microsoft, especially in the transition between Skype for Business and Microsoft Teams, has made incredible strides with the functionality that's baked into our mobile devices now. And you know, it's a core device. The tooling has been designed for the cloud, with the cloud in mind, and meaningful work can now be accomplished on mobile. And a lot of workplaces have not necessarily taken that into consideration yet, especially once we start getting into people kind of coming and going out of physical spaces, indicators of, hey, yeah, come bug me, come talk to me, or hey, I can't talk to you right now. Things like those Quando busy lights, those sorts of things that were popular a few years ago, still really important. We also find that in so many scenarios, folks, whereas maybe before we didn't pay a huge attention to someone's presence indicator or a presence message in a tool like Teams, or back in the day, Skype for Business, gosh, that can sure mean a lot more. Hey, I'm coming into the office at 10. Hey, I'll see you guys Thursday if you want to grab coffee. Oh, looks like Sean's in a meeting. That type of information is so much more important, and even down to little things like, okay, we're talking about some asynchronous work now in our hybrid environment. Maybe people need to come in earlier to the office to pick something up or have a quick meeting with someone before they go drop their kids off at school. Or maybe you need to pop in at 8 p.m. Are things like key codes, security codes, building access hours part of the consideration there? And so ultimately what we find is, between equipping people with the technical tools and software they need and managing those people changes, is being intentional about building a consistent culture. And so that's our next slide there, Tom. So thank you so much for switching that over. A huge part of what we do on a daily basis is just helping folks get the most from the tools they actually have right now, and leveraging them in a significant way. So we're a Microsoft shop for the vast majority of all the work that we do. There's some third-party things, but there are powerful tools in that software suite. This also includes literally the piece of plastic and metal on the top of your face, on the top of your head, in front of your face, with the headsets, speakerphones, things like that. Like I said, guys, down to, hey, people need to have maybe a second monitor now, and it's going to be at home, not necessarily at work. So having those right tools in place is absolutely huge, but we also want to be intentional about managing that transition. Again, COVID struck us. It caught us off guard in so many organizations. We had to quickly patch together something that would be secure and work for our users. And now we're still in that scenario. And in so many ways, we need to be taking a step back, looking at some of our governance decisions, looking at some of our security decisions, and being intentional about managing the people side of all this. And so Modality, we're a ProSci certified change management shop. That's Microsoft's preferred methodology for managing the whole people side of this. And Tom, you can skip to the next one and talk a little bit more about that just briefly here. Especially with this change that kind of happened to all of us in so many instances. And there's one little click past that, Tom. We've got a technical change that, like I said, we've been able to get out. We feel that people can safely and securely access things, take them through some level of a state change. Now, with people coming back in a true hybrid scenario, we're not quite at that future state yet, but my gosh, there's this whole extra side of things that people are used to not having to drive an hour each way to make work happen. Now we're in a scenario where some instances you're taking time more directly away from their family, and this can have a pretty significant impact. So Tom, that's our next one as well. Thank you so much. Ultimately, when we're managing that change effectively, when we're communicating effectively, when we're equipping folks with the knowledge that they need, we can keep people from dipping too deep toward amber. I've literally heard of folks saying, hey, they're forcing us all to go back to the office. That's a real bummer. That's going to kill me. And you see dissatisfaction and that sort of stuff go over, but you also start to hear the buzzing of people actually leaving. So again, it really is highlighting the importance of being intentional about managing this transition. And so some of the core tenets of the change management that we like to bring to bear in this hybrid environment are on our next slide as well. And so Microsoft encourages, and we as well do a full approach with an introduction and workshops around adoption and change management, as well as building communications, build training, and any of that actual content that we do need to build out, not just walk people through. We're happy to come alongside folks. But the core of what can make a significant difference for you in this hybrid world that we're living in now is right here. If you guys can walk through some of these steps, you're going to be ahead of the game. And again, we're happy to help as well. So let us know, ask questions, whatever. We're happy to address that during the webinar as well. But first and foremost, clear and concise communications is huge. Understandable. Just send links to more info if desired and when that's necessary. Messages that are more broad, that communicate the value and the business reasons behind a potential change, or especially around this hybrid stuff, really need to come from a higher level. They need to come from a meaningful sender. They need to come from an executive sponsor. And those messages that are going to have more of an impact on a daily basis, that those what's in it for me types of messages, what are you physically asking me to do or change or test or begin to do, really do need to come from those direct line managers. That's an important piece. And then the other huge thing is, anytime you're communicating this type of relatively significant change in an organization, it's got to get through those existing channels, but you also have to have some stuff that flies above the radar, a little out of the box. I mean, we're literally talking about getting crazy with, in the past, it might be bathroom stalls or hall posters, or it needs to permeate those existing scenarios as well, like those all hands meetings, CEO broadcasts, even getting stuff out on Yammer. And so that's really some steps that we carry people through for communications. As far as developing training and making sure that people actually know how we want to develop culture and how to maybe operate a little bit differently in a hybrid environment, you got to look at the needs of those users. I mean, someone in sales is going to have a lot different needs than someone in finance. And so they're still going to be doing a lot more meetings online, a lot more telephony online, but they still need to now be well aware of those. Existing resources is huge. Microsoft has a pretty significant suite, but depending on your governance and your security decisions that you've made, that could impact some of that more generic stuff. And so we do develop bespoke things as necessary. And then that delivery method is huge as well. So make sure that that's hidden in all those different learning styles. And guys, happy to talk more about that as necessary. Tom, let's jump over. Yeah, thank you so much. One of the things that everybody experiences, and we'll transition to talking about a key factor of the hybrid work environment, is meeting fatigue, right? Pardon me, guys, there we go. So it's a really pertinent topic of conversation, and some of that equipping folks and things we need to communicate are around this meeting fatigue. This is super, I don't want to say generic, but everyone's experiencing this stuff. In a lot of cases, there's some pretty significant things you can do in three different categories. We kind of broke it down to stuff that impacts you directly, how you can manage your time. We can talk about a little bit of the cultural shift in the organization that might require some more comms and equipping from a broader perspective, a higher sponsor. And then ultimately there's that, how does my time in that 40 minutes, that hour, that 2 hours, that 3 hours during that actual meeting, how can we do that a little bit differently? So first and foremost, it's just really basic, and it's scheduling less meetings. And that sounds so basic and simple, but it can mean that, hey, instead of scheduling a meeting with 2 or 3 people, you just have a group chat going in Teams, or even better than that, you're mentioning folks in a Teams channel. That's something that's been available for quite some time now, but we're so much more inclined to schedule a meeting versus have a more asynchronous conversation. It can still accomplish a lot of the work that we need to do. A huge one for me as well, guys, lately, and we keep hearing it over and over again from customers, is there needs to be actual time slots in your schedule, not just blank, but that say, walk or lunch or breather. Like there needs to be actual, hey, don't stomp on this time blocked out on your calendar. And it should probably be during your normal work hours, if you know what I'm saying. The flip side of that is just time for you to actually do work. And Microsoft's been really great about this, developing some more recent tools for just building in focus time. And focus time automatically updates your status, so you're on Do Not Disturb. Just make sure that time is meaningful and that you're using it in a meaningful way. And if not, switch your status back over to available. If you can be interrupted during that time, just update your status. But even in Teams and Outlook now, you can open up and say, hey, what are my available slots? How much time do I want? And build in some real deal focus time. Cultural shift, also huge. We kind of touched on leveraging more collab tools in general. That can and should be communicated from a higher level. The shorter and less meetings really can begin to come from that higher level, people communicating, hey, here's how we're going to do things at this organization. We're going to schedule meetings for 50 minutes instead of 60 minutes. We're going to schedule meetings for 90 minutes instead of 120 minutes, and the breaking up those intervals of how that happens and what actually might require a change. And some of that is process driven, right? So if you're a PM, you might have status meetings. It might require some actual change in process, not just how individuals might schedule their time. Formally leveraging collab tools, building out those teams, building out the structures, building out private channels maybe to make this stuff happen is huge. And then giving people the permission to be a little more asynchronous, leveraging a meeting recording, leveraging and putting meaningful information and questions in meeting chat and notes and things like that can be a great way to make it all a little bit more accessible, even if you didn't necessarily show up. And then some of the basic stuff that I think is basic, but we don't see that often for longer meetings, anything over an hour. Like if you're doing workshops, things like that, that used to be, you'd have a little coffee break and tea and grab cookies. I don't know. You'd have a bio break, and now that needs to be baked into what's going on. You need to schedule a bio break. You need to throw it on a slide and have a countdown and have those 8 to 10 minutes and then have everyone come back. Getting up, moving around physically, I should know better, but I never do it, but it makes a huge difference. Joining from your mobile can be huge as well. Just taking a meeting in the kitchen, in the car. So many of us think we're more important than we are, and the quality of microphones has gotten way better, and everyone is kind of used to the more flexible environments now, and the quality of a meeting experience on mobile is phenomenal these days. So if you haven't tried that out, switching back and forth between those meetings is excellent now. And sometimes you just need to have your camera off. It's really nice to see folks, see faces, but sometimes just switching that off can be a big piece of it as well. You can wear your hoodie, you can drink your coffee, you don't have to worry about your hair. So obviously some pros to seeing real humans, but also kind of nice just to talk to people sometimes. So that is plenty for me. Ultimately, this is can be a pretty complicated thing. Our customers need help navigating this world of all these meetings and conferencing, and having tools that are meaningful for that to help people easily connect is huge. So that's stuff our customers ask for all the time, and we've developed some pretty meaningful tools for that. We don't want to let anybody down. We want people to be able to connect with anyone, anywhere, on any device, and we don't want to let down our customers. So with that in mind, I bring up the one and only Tom Scott.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Michael. Fascinating. I think it's tempting as technologists to focus purely on the technology, the problems, the network, the cloud performance, and all the stuff that goes with it. But there is such a huge people side to this that I think Michael did a great job in highlighting there. So thank you for that. Very quickly, I'm just going to now, from the focusing on the people and change side of this, start and flip the discussion now to sort of the role of technology within hybrid working, and to give you some examples of how some technical considerations you need to take to ensure that the culture that you're trying to build works as people come back to the office. So focusing on one of the biggest changes we've seen throughout the pandemic is the uptake of video conferencing. Since March last year, when we were all forced into lockdown through scenario that nobody would ever wish for, and I think I speak for many people, everybody, when I say we wouldn't want to go through it again. But with lockdown, video calls and video conferencing took a monumental leap forward. It became a part of everyday life, not just in unified communications and corporate world, but socially as well. We did Zoom quizzes, we did video calls to keep in touch with family. And as a result of this, platforms such as Teams, Zoom and WebEx have seen a huge uptake since then. And with people working remotely, adopting new practices through software such as Teams or whichever collaboration service you're using, then people have adopted desktop conferencing as a way of keeping in touch with people, with Teams meetings. As Michael talked about, meeting fatigue. This is because people are adopting online meetings. And this is a good thing. This is what people have been striving towards for a long time. I think one of the key things is trying to find the balance of how much to do this. So with that in mind, this idea of this working approach that people have adopted and this way of working people have adopted throughout the pandemic is going to continue. And when people return to the office, one of the challenges that you're going to face is how do you enable people continue working this way when they return to the office? So focusing on video conferencing, some of the challenges that you'll see are that meeting rooms, video meeting rooms that you've got will now need to accommodate people connecting from anywhere and everywhere. So some people will be in the office doing desktop video, some people will be using the meeting room, and some people will be working at home. This hybrid challenge really is a challenge for people of needing to accommodate connectivity from everywhere, but not knowing necessarily who and how much. So some of the key challenges that you'll need to consider are your existing video conferencing kit and room systems ready for this new hybrid way of working? Can they integrate and deliver a simple user experience into cloud video conferencing platforms that people have adopted now? Is your network ready to support the increased amount of desktop video? With people working from home and split between the office and across teams, people are going to be used to doing desktop video, so they will do it when they're back in the office. So this isn't just for internal meetings as well. Consideration. Another one needs to be how you work with your clients in this way, because like you, they will also have adopted this hybrid model and this remote way of working. So to give you an example of some work that we did recently, we spoke with a large client services organization, a global organization, who have adopted Teams during the pandemic, amongst other conferencing tools. Teams is the strategy, and Microsoft Teams room systems are the strategy for all of the internal meetings. But they often have a challenge that they need to participate in video meetings that their clients host. So this could be any range of all of the video conferencing platforms that have been popularized during the last 18 months. And they don't know which ones. It could be any of them, depending on who the client is. So the challenge was, how do they set up their external meeting rooms so that users can join regardless of the video platform being used and have a simple self-service experience with that. So it's a fairly key challenge to this, because that's you've got the kit that people want to use, people want to join other people's meetings. One Meeting is our modality platform that we use to resolve this. It's a hosted multi-tenanted PEXIP environment that does video bridging. It can bridge any video room system into any type of video meeting, and is completely vendor agnostic. Our goal here, and as part of that cultural change that Michael spoke about, is making the technology invisible. So with this, we were able to give the user experience where, regardless of the type of meeting, they forward the meeting invitation to the meeting room. A join button appears on that video room system. Then the user clicks on join and they are taken straight into that, regardless of the platform. So we're working to the same workflow, making the technology invisible to focus on making it easy to use and making sure that we've got a safety valve in there so that there is a workaround whereby people can join the meeting even if they don't forward the invitation to it. So the key thing for us there was making the technology invisible, allowing people to continue to work in this way with a simple join experience to all of the platforms. But it was a consideration that I think was very relevant. So I just wanted to bring it up here today. And as we go forward, habits will have formed for people. You know, people will have worked in a certain way for 18 months and they will continue to expect to work in this way in the office. And as technologists, as an IT department, we and IT professionals, we need to be able to facilitate that. So one of the key things, as a segue into the next section here, is to look at really, is your network ready for people using video? We had one customer who quoted their desktop video usage is up from 20% to 80% following the pandemic. So with that in mind, how can you assess whether your network is going to be able to hold up to that when everybody returns to the office? These are some of the challenges that we need to deliver a seamless experience to people so they continue this hybrid way of working that they've established. So that was everything I was going to talk to. Without further ado, I will hand over to Sean now, who is going to give us an overview around really maximising the investment that you've got and using the tools available to you to deliver that consistent user experience for people. So great. Sean, over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so yeah, as Tom was discussing there very aptly, the increase in video usage and network readiness and you know, more media and more workload on your network is a key consideration. So alongside those challenges really in a hybrid world is, you know, am I delivering a great call quality and reliability for all scenarios, not just the office, but also when I'm remote and when I'm at home. As Michael was talking about, there's different people with different usage and behaviours. Different communication options and needs. Some people use video, some people tend to flip to audio more. But as Tom was saying, the increase in video usage is completely accelerated with mainly driven from home working, and people wanted to be more inclusive, as Michael was talking regarding the cultural change. Multiple devices and options, and it's really a continuum really between remote, office and hybrid. It's not just people working from home, it's a split between the two. And you know, there's tools there that can assist and can help you understand if the experience is the correct experience for your organization, and making sure that productivity is high and that your meetings and all of the great collaboration and work that you do is still consistent for your organization. So if you flip to the next slide there, Tom. You might have experienced some of these behaviors. Headsets, I would say, are probably one of the most underestimated, but probably one of the most valuable areas to look at. You might experience crackling, distortion, echoing. There's a lot of common terms out there. But what we see typically is a huge increase in people using their own headsets. So an organization will typically spend a huge investment in terms of change, adoption, and you know, purchase of certified headsets. And we see a lot of common usage of people using their own headsets. I've seen in a large enterprise something close to 60 to 80% usage of built-in microphone and speakers from built-in laptops. And of course, these create a bad quality experience. Same for video, so freezing and delayed video experience, as Tom was talking about. The usage of video is really high now. Having considerations for when you go back in the office, and your tech team's having a consideration to understand if the bandwidth is adequate, and how they can forecast it is really important. Next slide there, Tom. So what success really looks like is, from a cultural perspective, it's all about the sense of inclusion, not just when you're at home, but when you're in the office, and to be able to access anything, anywhere effectively using any device. Employees should feel supported. So if you're at home, it's not just about, you know, I'm at home, I've had a headset for 2 years, no one's really reached out to me and said, is this the right headset you're using? You know, I'm using my gaming headset more often than normal now, because, you know, I don't have the common IT support around me, and it's being proactive to reaching out to those users. And you really need data to show this. You know, removing the blockers between connectivity, as Michael was saying, with the 2 and 1 monitors, using your headsets, checking your Wi-Fi signal strength. These are all important for when you're at home. Making sure that you're consistent, reliable for your calls and meetings is critically important for remote workers as it is for in-office workers. So how do we measure success? So our solution in Modality, myself, I'm a product owner and focus on our solutions. We've approached this with our product called Teamwork Analytics, and it really shows you how people are collaborating. So what's going well, identifying the areas that need support and remediation, looking at the hybrid worker scenario, but also seeing where specifically people are having problems. And it's very data focused, so it's all about the numbers, it's very analytical, and I'll talk through some of the feature sets that are available through Teamwork Analytics as well. So it's not just about calls and meetings, also covering usage and governance, understanding how people ingest public teams, if teams are deleted, inactivity of teams and channels, looking at the amount of owners and the usage within teams. Teams calls and meetings are all about quality and reliability, looking at key performance indicators, devices, Wi-Fi, and much more. And you jump along there, Tom. So you really can't, provide an innovative experience for remote workers unless the network supports it. So as Tom was talking about earlier, really there's some really key challenges, especially in hybrid, with organizations trying to forecast the current usage versus the current capability, specifically when the remote office workers are turning back into the office. These adopt new behaviors, especially video, and as Tom was saying, this huge increase in calls and meetings. So it's really unforeseen. A lot of organizations are planning for people to come back in the office in terms of space and equipment, but not really looking at the underlying network. Is the Wi-Fi network suitable? Are people going to be using more video? Do I have bandwidth? What's the allocation? Are people doing different behaviors with teams and their tools? And then specifically common use of personal devices and poor home networks as well. You flip there for me, Tom. So we have bandwidth reporting within Teamwork Analytics, and it's all about looking at the capacity, the return to office, is it suitable, looking at those media, specific media elements, so for audio, video, and app sharing, and splitting it to understand what usage is and what to forecast for. And we can get right down to a network level view of the reporting. So we can look at each region, each country, each site, each network link, and see if we're close to the allocation for bandwidth. If you move ahead, devices, we can look at straight into device level information. So who's using onboard devices, where the common usage is, look at some of the events that occur around devices. So glitching, echo, and clipping are common data points that come back from Teams, and we can effectively look at which device is most inefficient and which is causing the most problems. And sometimes that's just a lack of hardware investment or a replenish of device. Even though it's certified, it can still have issues. So our reporting gets down to a very detailed level. Quality and reliability, so looking at things like packet loss, network issues, top problematic users, are your VIP users having more issues? Are your sales department having issues? We can determine this from the data, and we can determine this from either a work from home in a remote scenario and also in an office scenario. And we get right down to verbose level information, so understanding things like your access point, which is your Wi-Fi access point, and the ID that it's on, the frequency and channel, the level of information down to driver versions, and looking for inconsistencies and disparities between different versions and different elements to do with reliability. And Tom, you might want to just jump a little bit ahead. Some of the features that exist around Teamwork Analytics are alerts and also automation. So being proactive, so not just having to trail through the data and understand and monitor it and look at reports, but actually allowing the data to proactively reach out to your users. So we've got a huge amount of scenarios that can reach out to users, but specifically taking headsets as an example, if we were post this call not to be using the right headset, we could have a message posted to you in your Teams channel to say, hey, you just joined the call. You might be better off using a certified headset. Your common usage amongst your top calls this month has been 90% usage of non-certified. Here, click this link and go order a new headset. So it's really about that proactive automation. So teamwork analytics drives success. So it's all about monitoring the data, looking at the long-term user experience, all of the working scenarios, looking at reports, which are hugely verbose and cover a wide range of issues, but specifically in the return to office and understanding bandwidth and video, looking at those usage patterns and making sure you can prevent congestion and making sure the experience is seamless, and really supporting your users and your organization, making sure that you're productive, but unveiling and addressing those risk areas, all those weak points and locations and issues, and making sure you get fewer tickets and a better experience for everyone. And then running at pace, so having automation and alerting do this for you, so you don't just have to look at the reports and monitor them, but also having the technology to support you in that way. Some areas you can look at home as well, just to help yourself, is obviously certified headsets, raise incidents, don't be afraid to still speak to your IT department, ensure your connection is optimal and correct, check your Wi-Fi coverage, your signal, your strength, just it's something as simple as your access point placement can make a big difference. Check your internet speed, your service provider, your local bandwidth, and also your ports. Infrastructure, such as if you have home firewalls or you have even IoT devices like Sonuses and media players, just to make sure that there's no contention. Things like antivirus that might interrupt behaviors at home, and remove all of those doubts. So look at, reach out to your IT department and say, actually, what is my experience at home? People are complaining when I'm on calls. Do you see, packets being dropped for my calls? Am I getting persistently poor feedback for my calls? And really making sure you're reaching out. So in summary, as Michael was saying, really it's about focusing on the experience of users wherever they work, that consistent culture, well-managed change, just not just from a technical perspective, but also from a people and organizational perspective. Asynchronous working as well, so making sure that you can use Teams to its full advantage, catch up on recordings, catch up on transcripts, use channel messages, etc. As Tom was saying, assess your VC technology, look at how you're using video. Video usage is, as we're statistically saying, some of the highest usage that Microsoft has seen from a Teams perspective, and really looking at how you can review the team's performance to stay productive, allowing technology to help you, to help your organization, and to leverage the tools that are available. And really that's all about understanding where things are going wrong, not just at an organizational perspective, but also at a technical perspective. Cool. So I think we've got a few minutes, and excuse me for rushing through a few of the slides there, but we might have some time for some Q&A, Tom.
Yes, I think. Thanks, John. Thanks for that. Cool. That's fascinating, and I think hopefully you guys can see the breadth of this subject, from the people change through to the technology analytics that underpin it. There's a lot of work for us all to do. So I think we're at time now. So I don't believe we've had any questions come in the chat that I've seen. So with that in mind, we did have a couple of questions come in ahead of the webinar, which we will respond to you directly following this. But we're at time now for everybody who's joined. So again, I'll sign off just by saying thank you so much for everybody presenting today. Thank you for joining. And a recording of this will be sent around as well as the materials in the next couple of days. So I think that's everything from us, and just say thank you very much for joining, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Michael.
Cheers all.
Thanks all. Cheers, Tom.